8:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by J.O. Garage and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. The President meets the visiting IMF delegation today. Minister of Energy says Friday has been allocated for the health officials to fill fuel to their vehicles at the selected fuel filling stations island-wide. Sri Lanka receives 3 billion rupees worth humanitarian supplies from India. The Speaker endorses certificates on 3 bills. SLBC parliamentarian Dhammika Pereira was sworn in as the Minister of Investment Promotions today. Leave of Agriculture Ministry employees cancelled from 6th July. News overseas. A Japanese man loses a USB stick with the entire city's personal details. And in sports news, Australia restricts Sri Lanka to a 160 despite Chamika Karunaratne's 75. Those were the headlines, and now more to the details of the local news. Deputy Director General of Health Services, Dr. P. Vijay Surya said many world countries are facing similar economic challenges like Sri Lanka, and those countries are struggling to solve these problems. Those countries face many problems including food crisis, fuel shortage, medicine shortage, and many other humanitarian issues. Malnutrition is one of the main factors of concern at this moment. Dr. Vijay Surya added that the Health Ministry is to do its best to provide nutritious food to pregnant women and small children to overcome this challenge. India today delivered a humanitarian consignment containing 15,000 metric tons of essential items including rice, milk powder and pharmaceuticals to Sri Lankans. Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India Gopal Bagle, Minister of Health Kele Rambukwalla, Minister of Trade Nalin Fernando, MPs M.A. Sumandiran, Radha Krishnan, M. Uday Kumar, Anjagan Ramanathan and several others including Senthil Tondaman welcomed the donation. It consists of 14,700 metric tons of rice, 250 metric tons of milk powder and 38 metric tons of medicines donated by the people of India. The total value of this consignment is more than 3 billion Sri Lankan rupees, the Indian High Commission in Colombo stated in a statement. The consignment of humanitarian supplies underscores the abiding people-to-people bonds between India and Sri Lanka and also concerns of the people of India for the well-being of their brethren in Sri Lanka, the statement read further. These supplies are planned to be distributed among beneficiaries by the Sri Lankan government in the coming days. This is the second consignment provided under a larger commitment of 40,000 metric tons of rice, 500 metric tons of milk powder and medicines by the government of Tamil Nadu. India's unprecedented economic, financial and humanitarian assistance to the people of Sri Lanka stands at over $3.5 billion in the year 2022. Speaker of the Parliament Mahinda Yapa Abewardana yesterday endorsed the Certificate on Industrial Dispute Special Provisions, the Code of Criminal Procedures Amendment, Civil Procedure Code Amendment Bills, which were passed in Parliament recently. The purpose of the Industrial Dispute Special Provision Bill is to reduce the congestion at Magistrates Court in resolving labour disputes and to delegate the power of prosecution to the chairman of the labour tribunals. The Code of Criminal Procedures Amendment Bill amends Section 444 of the Code of Criminal Procedures Act No. 15 of 1979 and provides a free copy of the final order of the judgment or the case report to each party in a case free of charge. The Civil Procedure Code Amendment Bill adds new Section 154A to the Civil Procedures Code and exempts certain documents from formal proof in certain legal proceedings. Accordingly, the said bills will thus be in effect as Civil Procedure Code Amendment Act No. 17 of the year 2022, Code of Criminal Procedures Amendment Act No. 18 of 2022, and the Industrial Dispute Special Provisions Act No. 19 of 2022. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The leaves of staff members of all departments under the purview of the Agriculture Minister will be cancelled with effect from 6th July. According to the Agricultural Ministry, the decision was taken to facilitate the efficient distribution of urea fertilizer arriving in Sri Lanka from India. The decision was reached upon the instructions of the Agriculture Ministry. Earlier this month, Sri Lanka today inked a line of credit agreement with the Export-Import Bank of India for the purchase of 65,000 metric tons of urea fertilizer required for the Yala season. In response to an urgent request from the Sri Lankan government, the government of India decided to extend an LOC of $55 million to Sri Lanka for the procurement of urea fertilizer. A special meeting was held between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the members of the IMF today at the President's house in Fort. The IMF delegation said that they have come here to assess the current situation to ascertain the future of the IMF's tranche to be provided to Sri Lanka in installments. The IMF is expected to complete its preliminary staff-level discussions by next week. The President briefed the visiting IMF delegation about the present economic crisis and taken steps to address this issue so far. The discussion was held based on the policies and principles of the International Monetary Fund with the sole objective of addressing the economic challenges of the country concerned. The President thanked the IMF delegation for extending the fullest support to Sri Lanka at this crucial juncture. SLBC parliamentarian Dhammika Perera was sworn in as the Minister of Investment Promotion today. Mr. Perera took oaths as the Minister of Presence at the presence of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house in Fort this afternoon. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. The President meets the visiting IMF delegation today. The Minister of Energy says Friday has been allocated for the health officials to fill fuel to their vehicles at the selected fuel filling stations island-wide. Sri Lanka receives 3 billion Sri Lankan rupee worth humanitarian supplies from India. The Speaker endorses certificate on 3 bills. SLBC parliamentarian Dhammika Perera was sworn in as the Minister of Investment Promotion today. The leaves of Agriculture Ministry employees cancelled from 6th July. And that was the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The main news story for tonight, Professor Rangita De Silva de Alves was elected to the UN Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women for the term 2023-26, representing Sri Lanka at the elections conducted during the 22nd meeting of the state parties to the CEDAW Convention at the United Nations in New York yesterday, the 23rd of June. At this election, state parties to the convention elected 12 members out of the 23 candidates to the committee of the convention. Sri Lanka obtained 124 votes, obtaining the 5th highest number of votes. The other countries elected are Cuba, Uganda, Nigeria, Egypt, Israel, Spain, Estonia, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Trinidad and Tobago, and Japan. Sri Lanka became a state party to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in the year 1981. The Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, is the body of independent experts that monitors implementation of the Convention, which consists of 23 experts on women's rights from around the globe. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And in Washington tonight, Minister of Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said Friday has been allocated for the health officials to fill fuel to their vehicles at the selected fuel filling stations island-wide. Accordingly, 85 filling stations are provided with this facility. The health service has been identified as one of the essential services. The selected fuel stations are provided with 6,600 litres of petrol and diesel, the minister added. Meanwhile, the minister also said the scheduled fuel ship carrying 40,000 metric tons will be delayed further due to technical reasons. That came to you in Washlight, and now let's move on to the headlines of the world news. Ukraine orders forces to withdraw from key eastern city. A Japanese man loses a USB stick with the entire city's personal details. Afghanistan earthquake, survivors struggle for food and shelter amidst cholera fears. Those were the headlines, and now we move on to the details of the world news. Ukrainian forces have been ordered to withdraw from the eastern city, according to a top regional official. The eastern city has endured weeks of bombardment as Russian forces try to take complete control of the region. A Ukrainian retreat would be significant because it would leave all of the Luhansk under the Russian control except for the city of Lysychansk. For many, after-work drinks are a common way of relaxing after a busy week. But for one worker in Japan, could be nursing a protracted hangover after he lost a USB memory stick following a night out with his colleagues. This is because it contained the personal details of nearly 500,000 people. The unnamed man placed the memory stick in his bag before an evening of drinking in the city northwest of Osaka. Survivors of Afghanistan's deadliest earthquake in 2 decades say that they have nothing to eat, no shelter, and fear a possible cholera outbreak. The BBC Kermani reports from the Pitika province, the hardest hit by the disaster. Searching through the debris in what is left of his family home, Aghan John's eyes well up with fears and tears and said, "These were my son's shoes," he says, brushing out the dust off them. His 3 young sons and 2 wives were killed in the earthquake as they slept. The tremor struck in the early hours of Wednesday as he rushed towards the room where his family was staying. And to conclude the world news, the headlines once again. Ukraine orders forces to withdraw from the eastern key city. A Japanese man loses a USB stick with the entire city's personal details. Afghanistan earthquake, survivors struggle for food and shelter amidst cholera fears. That concludes the world news, and let's move on to development news. A Sri Lankan case takes on the cause of airlifting internationally donated essential medicines and medical equipment to hospitals in Sri Lanka free of freight charges. The corporate social responsibility arm of Sri Lankan Airlines aims to provide timely relief to hospitals that are struggling to cope with the ongoing drug shortage and patients who depend on life-saving medicines in the country throughout this initiative. And that came to you in the segment of Development News.
Sports News is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news, Sri Lanka's ruling collapse ate up to the top order, disseminated by the middle and the threatening to wipe out the tail until Shamika Karunaratne intervened with 75 all 74. He lifted Sri Lanka from an embarrassing 85 for 8 to 160 all out, striking up a 58-run 9th wicket stand with a debutant Pramod Madhushan before striking big blows to the company of number 11 Mahtish Tikshana. Even on track taking significant turn, however, this is some distance from being a competitive total. However, the Australians are also testing the same medicines what Sri Lankans had before. Australia was placed at 102 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in 29 overs. And moving on to the scoreboard, Sri Lanka batted first and was bowled out for 160 in the 43rd over. Australia in reply were 102 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in 29 overs a short while ago. That was the sports news. Business news coming up.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSP You Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Ceylon Tobacco Company said that the sales of cigarettes has increased by 5% in the quarter ended 31st March compared to the same quarter in the year 2021. The company's financial statements for the first quarter ended 31st March 2022, the company reported a profit after tax of 4.18 billion rupees for the first quarter. That was the business news. Economic news follows.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSBU Trust.
Economic news, courtesy of
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
Despite the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka, Indonesia is still keen to enter into a preferential trade agreement with Sri Lanka. Indonesian ambassador to Sri Lanka, Dewi Gustina Tobing, said at the National Chamber of Commerce organized bilateral trade discussion event yesterday. Speaking to the media after the event, she said that some progress has been made in this regard and they are very keen to follow this up further. This is because we see a tremendous trade potential between the two countries. As the only G20 member state in the Southeast Asia, the country has the largest economy in the region and is classified as a newly industrialized country. As per a 2022 estimate, it is the world's 17th largest economy by nominal GDP and 7th in terms of GDP at PPP, estimated to be at $1.289 trillion and $3.995 trillion respectively. Per capita GDP in PPP is $14,535 while nominal per capita GDP is $4,691. That was economic news and the weather report to conclude.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
And finally, the weather report. The Met Department says showery condition over the southwestern part of the island, thus the western Sabaragamuwa provinces, and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts is expected to enhance slightly from today. Showers or thunder showers will occur at times in the western Sabaragamuwa and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts. Fairly heavy showers above 50 millimeters may occur at some places in the Sabaragamuwa province and in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. Showers or thunder showers will occur at a few places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batikula districts during the afternoon or night. This weather report was published this evening at 7:30 p.m. Further details could be obtained by visiting the official website of the department. Meanwhile, the International Weather Forecast website, AccuWeather.com, reports that the day's weather was cloudy with occasional showers. Today's daytime temperature was observed to be around 30 degrees Celsius. There will be light showers in many places in the Colombo district in the night. Tonight's temperature will be around 26 degrees Celsius and there will be scattered showers in selected spots late in the night. The ground temperature would be around 27 degrees Celsius at the time of this news broadcast. The air quality index AQI is 17, which is fair air condition in Colombo. The air quality is generally acceptable for most individuals. However, sensitive groups may experience minor to moderate symptoms from long-term exposure. Before we conclude this bulletin of news, let's get back to the headlines once again. The President meets the visiting IMF delegation today. Ministry of Energy says that Friday has been allocated for the health officials to fill fuel to their vehicles at the selected fuel filling stations island-wide. Sri Lanka receives 3 billion Sri Lankan rupees worth humanitarian supplies from India. The Speaker endorses certificate on 3 bills. SLBC parliamentarian Dhammika Pereira was sworn in as a Minister of Investment Promotion today. The leaves of Agricultural Ministry employees cancelled from 6th July. In news overseas, a Japanese man loses a USB stick with the entire city's personal details. And in sports news, Australia restricts Sri Lanka to a 160 despite Chamik Karunaratne's 75. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news.